I don't concern myself with outside type of things. But I'm committed to his development, just like all of our rookies. So
Shedeur Sanders just wanted reps, but a preseason sideline clash with Browns coach Kevin Stefanski blew up into one of the NFL's most viral controversies. Was it tough coaching or something deeper? The footage tells its own story. Let's break down what really went down. The viral sideline clash. The Cleveland Browns preseason has ignited a storm of controversy, centering on rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders and head coach Kevin Stefanski. What began as a routine rotation of quarterbacks has spiraled into one of the most polarizing discussions of the NFL preseason, fueled by viral footage and reporting. The situation has become a flashpoint, drawing in commentators, former players, and fans who see starkly different realities unfolding in Cleveland. The first flashpoint came late in the Browns preseason finale. Sanders, the fifth-round draft pick and son of NFL legend Deion Sanders, had endured a brutal outing. Just 3 completions on 6 attempts, a meager 14 yards, and 5 sacks. The offense managed only a single first down during its 5 series. Yet when the Browns regained possession with the chance to engineer a final drive, Stefanski pulled Sanders and inserted Tyler Huntley instead. Cameras caught Sanders approaching Stefanski on the sideline, visibly agitated, before being waved off. The moment spread instantly online, sparking accusations of sabotage, favoritism, and a deliberate attempt to stifle Sanders' development. The clip itself was brief but revealing. Asked about Sanders' reaction after being pulled, Stefanski told reporters,
he's a competitive kid. The plan was to go with Snoop there, but I wouldn't make any more of it than that.
His calm dismissal did little to calm the fury brewing outside the locker room. That fury was exemplified in a fiery rant posted immediately after the game. The allegations drew attention because Sanders had already been the subject of controversy during the draft. Analysts such as Mel Kiper Jr. had ranked him as the top quarterback in the class, projecting him as a first-rounder. Instead, he fell to the 5th round, picked 144th overall, a slide that many attributed to off-field perceptions about his personality and the outsized shadow of his father. His fall was described as shameful by critics who believed front offices feared both Sanders' confidence and the potential influence of Deion Sanders. That context has framed every subsequent snap of Sanders' NFL career. When Sanders dazzled in his first preseason outing against Carolina, throwing with poise and accuracy, making plays outside the pocket, his supporters claimed vindication. When he struggled in later games, his detractors pointed to the very flaws scouts had warned about: holding the ball too long, drifting into pressure, failing to recognize when to throw it away. The Browns' handling of his reps, particularly in comparison to Dillon Gabriel, who was drafted 2 rounds earlier, has become the focal point of the debate. Hall of Fame quarterback Kurt Warner gave voice to the frustration of many neutral observers. He said, "I was really looking forward to the competition between Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders in the last preseason game. Dillon Gabriel played well again, but had good opportunities to make plays. Shedeur Sanders didn't have those same opportunities, so it was hard to make much of an assessment." This discrepancy between opportunity and outcome has fueled the perception that Sanders has been set up to fail. The national debate intensified when Stephen A. Smith addressed the situation on ESPN's First Take. While acknowledging the optics of Stefanski's decision were problematic, Stephen A. rejected the idea of sabotage.
To accuse this man of sabotaging Shedeur Sanders is another thing entirely. I think that's a bit extreme.
He pointed to Sanders' poor performance against 3rd and 4th string defenders, arguing that Stefanski may have been protecting him from further embarrassment. Ryan Clark, however, saw it differently. He insisted that Sanders should have been allowed to finish the game. To Clark, denying Sanders that chance was not sabotage, but still a mishandling of a young player's growth. What has made this controversy so combustible is the collision of competing narratives. On one side, Stefanski defenders argue that the coach, a 2-time NFL Coach of the Year, has earned the benefit of the doubt. They emphasize Sanders' flaws, slow reads, reluctance to throw the ball away, costly sacks, as evidence that his benching was justified. On the other side, Sanders supporters see a pattern of dismissive treatment, beginning with the draft snub and extending to the uneven opportunities afforded in preseason. To them, the viral footage was not an isolated decision, but part of an ongoing marginalization. The imagery of Sanders being waved off by Stefanski crystallized the debate. It symbolized, for critics, a coach unwilling to invest in his development and eager to shield veterans like Joe Flacco from scrutiny. For supporters of Stefanski, it was a pragmatic choice in a game already decided, designed to prevent further damage to a rookie already rattled. But for the public, the clip spread online ensured that the narrative of conflict would overshadow all nuance. The Sanders-Stefanski drama had become bigger than football. It was about legacy, perception, opportunity, and power within the NFL. And with the regular season looming, the stakes only grew higher. The most striking element of this unfolding saga is the way perception has overshadowed raw performance. In isolation, a rookie quarterback struggling in preseason is neither unusual nor particularly newsworthy. Across decades, First-year passers have stumbled under the bright lights of the NFL, only to recover and eventually thrive. Yet with Shedeur Sanders, every snap has been magnified, every sideline exchange dissected, every coaching decision scrutinized. That amplification is not simply because of his last name, but because of the broader expectations surrounding him long before he stepped onto a professional field.
The Browns are sabotaging Shedeur Sanders is not only false, it's wildly disrespectful and disingenuous.
For months, analysts had projected Sanders as an elite talent. Draft previews highlighted his arm strength, pocket poise, and leadership qualities, traits developed during his time at Jackson State and Colorado. At Colorado, despite playing behind a porous offensive line that surrendered more than 50 sacks in a single season, Sanders set program records for completions and passing efficiency. Those achievements created the perception of a quarterback capable of transcending his environment. When he fell to the 5th round, critics argued that league decision-makers were penalizing him not for talent but for image and association with his father. That narrative created a sense of injustice, priming fans to interpret any negative development in Cleveland as confirmation of systemic bias. The preseason finale provided the perfect storm for these narratives to collide. Sanders' first snap in the second half hinted at promise. A rollout to his right, a well-placed strike to tight end Sal Cannella up the boundary. But Cannella himself was emblematic of the circumstances facing Sanders. A journeyman who had bounced between practice squads and alternative leagues, Cannella was not even listed on the Browns' official depth chart. After that opening play, the supporting cast surrounding Sanders collapsed. Receivers failed to gain separation. Protection broke down repeatedly, and Sanders found himself engulfed by defenders before routes could develop. By the end of his outing, the numbers painted a picture of ineptitude. Yet, context revealed a quarterback operating with the lowest possible margin for success. That context, however, did not soften criticism. In fact, it sharpened it. Commentators framed the decision to pair Sanders with fringe roster players as deliberate marginalization. They argued that the organization sought to suppress his visibility, fearful of the media frenzy that would accompany any sustained success.
That's how it struck me that they threw him in because they didn't want him to make any more splash and put any more heat on Stefanski.
The implication was not incompetence, but orchestration, a conscious choice to set Sanders up to fail rather than to compete on equal footing. The climax came in the game's closing minutes. With the Browns trailing but still possessing the ball, Sanders attempted to re-enter, only for Stefanski to send in Tyler Huntley instead. Cameras captured the moment of confrontation, Sanders visibly incredulous, Stefanski resolute. To neutral observers, it was a coach executing a predetermined plan. The institutional dynamics of the Browns further complicated the story. Ownership, led by Jimmy Haslam, has long been associated with high-profile decisions designed to capture headlines. Critics argued that drafting Sanders was more about publicity than football, pointing to the franchise's troubled recent history and desire to deflect from controversies such as the Deshaun Watson contract. The situation reveals how quickly NFL narratives can transcend the field. A 5th-round rookie's preseason reps should be a minor storyline, yet Sanders' lineage, draft saga, and charismatic presence transformed it into a league-wide talking point, media firestorm, and divided reactions. The firestorm that erupted after Shedeur Sanders' sideline confrontation with Kevin Stefanski did not fade quietly. Instead, it expanded into a league-wide controversy, consuming sports media platforms, talk radio, and online discourse. The incident became more than a question of one player's reps in a preseason finale. It evolved into a referendum on coaching decisions, quarterback development, and the treatment of young talent in the NFL. What elevated this story beyond Cleveland was not simply the footage itself, but the relentless debate it sparked, amplified by commentators and former players who framed the situation in radically different ways. The coach's calm, measured tone stood in stark contrast to the outrage boiling in the media. He acknowledged that Stefanski's choice to bench Sanders before the 2-minute drill could be second-guessed, but rejected the notion that a 2-time Coach of the Year would deliberately undermine a rookie quarterback. For Stephen A., the larger issue was Sanders' performance itself. When you talk about 11 dropbacks, 5 sacks, just 3 completions, 4 3-and-outs, and 5 series, 1 fumble recovered by a teammate, those were the numbers. From his perspective, Stefanski may have been protecting Sanders from further embarrassment rather than sabotaging him. Ryan Clark disagreed. While dismissing sabotage accusations as false, he criticized Stefanski for denying Sanders developmental reps.
Part of that development is watching a young quarterback deal with adversity and how does he rebound from it? How does he react? And if you knew that Snoop Huntley wasn't going to be on the team this week, which I'm sure they did, there's no reason to say we need to get him reps.
To Clark, The error was not malicious intent, but short-sighted management. By pulling Sanders, Stefanski robbed him of a crucial opportunity to demonstrate resilience. Dan Orlovsky added another dimension. He argued that the performance issues seen in Sanders' preseason outing were consistent with the critiques from his college film. Orlovsky stressed that while Sanders showed flashes in his earlier preseason appearance against Carolina, he regressed significantly against the Rams. For Orlovsky, the debate over sabotage obscured the real issue. Sanders simply did not play well, and coaches were within their rights to manage him accordingly. This triangulation of opinions, Stephen A. defending Stefanski's integrity, Clark questioning his developmental strategy, Orlovsky emphasizing Sanders' flaws, illustrated the polarized landscape into which the viral footage landed. But what made the debate so combustible was the underlying context of Sanders' draft fall. As Clark noted, many analysts had evaluated Sanders as a late first-round or early second-round prospect, yet he slid to the 5th round. That slide created an expectation among fans that any team drafting him had secured a steal. The Browns, therefore, were seen as holding a player with far greater potential than his draft slot indicated. When Stefanski treated Sanders as a developmental afterthought rather than a priority project, the dissonance between external expectation and internal reality fueled outrage. Kurt Warner's commentary added credibility to these frustrations. He observed that Dillon Gabriel had been given cleaner opportunities to succeed, while Sanders had been thrust into unfavorable conditions. It was a bummer that neither had the same opportunities to make plays. Dillon Gabriel played well again, but had good opportunities. Shedeur Sanders didn't have those same opportunities, so it was hard to make much of an assessment. Warner stopped short of accusing Stefanski of bias, but underscored the inequities in circumstance that made a direct comparison between quarterbacks misleading. His remarks echoed the complaints of Sanders' supporters, who saw the handling of reps as stacked against him. The viral controversy also tapped into long-standing criticisms of Kevin Stefanski's leadership style. Commentators pointed out his history of strained relationships with quarterbacks, most notably Baker Mayfield. In that case, Stefanski was accused of micromanaging and eroding Mayfield's confidence, contributing to his eventual exit from Cleveland. Meanwhile, supporters of Stefanski highlighted his track record of stabilizing the Browns, earning 2 Coach of the Year awards, and navigating constant quarterback turnover. To them, the idea that he would risk his reputation and job security by deliberately sabotaging a 5th-round rookie was implausible. They argued that Sanders' struggles were not evidence of a conspiracy, but confirmation of the league's evaluation that he was a developmental prospect, not an immediate starter. From this perspective, the viral outrage was less about reality and more about the spectacle of a famous name encountering adversity.
It's just excruciating to watch what they're trying to do to Shedeur. Again, they're still trying to teach him a lesson. They sabotaged it. They rigged it against him today, putting him in with 3rd and 4th stringers, 5th stringers.
The question of Deion Sanders' shadow loomed over every discussion. Shedeur's association with his father created both opportunity and burden. As the fiery rant after the preseason finale claimed, many in the league were scared to death that drafting Shedeur might eventually lead to ownership, considering Deion for coaching roles. This fear, according to critics, explained both his draft slide and the reluctance of some coaching staffs to embrace him. Even though Shedeur and Deion had mutually agreed it was time for Shedeur to chart his own path, the perception that he remained tethered to his father's influence persisted. In the context of the Browns, this narrative fed speculation that Stefanski viewed Shedeur not merely as a rookie, but as a potential threat to his authority. The Browns' organizational dynamics compounded these tensions. Jimmy Haslam's reputation for meddling in football operations, coupled with the controversial $230 million guaranteed contract to Deshaun Watson, created an environment where every personnel decision was second-guessed. Some insiders suggested that Sanders' selection may have been ownership-driven rather than a product of Stefanski and general manager Andrew Berry's strategy. If true, that would help explain the lukewarm commitment from the coaching staff, who might have viewed Sanders as an imposed project rather than a chosen one. In that scenario, the preseason finale and the decision to bench Sanders could be interpreted less as sabotage and more as quiet resistance to ownership's interference. Fans who might not have watched a single Browns preseason snap engaged with the controversy through these snippets, forming opinions based not on full context but on a few seconds of video. The incident demonstrated how modern discourse around athletes can be shaped more by perception and virality than by comprehensive evaluation of performance. For Sanders, the implications were profound. As Stephen A. warned, the Rams game might represent the only NFL action he sees all year.
Here's the sad part about what we saw this weekend. That may be the only time we see Shedeur Sanders on the NFL field this year. That will be our lasting memory unless all of those dominoes fall, Dan.
If true, then the viral footage would not just be a preseason subplot. It would become the defining image of his rookie campaign. For a player with aspirations of becoming a franchise-altering quarterback, that is a daunting prospect. For Stefanski, the challenge is equally daunting. Even if his decision was rooted in pragmatism, the perception of mishandling a high-profile rookie can linger. In a league where coaches are constantly evaluated not only on wins, but also on player development, the appearance of stunting a promising talent can damage credibility. Already facing skepticism about his ability to maximize offensive potential, Stefanski now finds his name linked to accusations of humiliation and suppression. Whether justified or not, those associations can prove difficult to erase. The broader NFL community is left grappling with uncomfortable questions. What obligation do coaches have to provide equal opportunities to players drafted later than expected? How should franchises balance internal evaluations with external expectations amplified by media and fans? And most critically, to what extent should viral perception shape organizational decision-making? In the case of Sanders and Stefanski, these questions have no easy answers, yet they have become inescapable, dominating preseason discourse and setting the stage for ongoing scrutiny as the regular season unfolds. By the end of the week, the Sanders-Stefanski controversy had transcended Cleveland. It had become a case study in modern sports culture, a collision of legacy, perception, performance, and media amplification. What began as a simple coaching decision in a meaningless preseason game had transformed into a viral spectacle, one that would follow both men long after the final whistle. Future stakes for Sanders, Stefanski, and the Browns. The aftermath of the Sanders-Stefanski confrontation left the NFL community not only debating what had just unfolded, but also speculating about what would come next. Preseason games are typically forgotten within days, yet this incident created ripple effects that will linger throughout the season and potentially beyond. The viral footage, amplified by debate shows, social media discourse, and insider reporting, cemented itself as a pivot point in both Shedeur Sanders' rookie year and Kevin Stefanski's tenure as head coach of the Cleveland Browns. To fully grasp its implications, one must consider the parallel futures it has opened for player and coach alike. For Shedeur Sanders, the most immediate concern is roster security. Despite his struggles against the Rams, Sanders expressed optimism about his standing, telling reporters he remained confident he will make the Browns' 53-man roster. That confidence, however, belies the harsh reality of NFL roster management. With veterans like Joe Flacco entrenched, Dylan Gabriel firmly in developmental plans as a third-round selection, and Kenny Pickett still in the mix, Sanders risked being the odd man out. If so, his rookie campaign could be defined less by development and more by invisibility. This precarious situation has fueled speculation that the Browns might attempt to stash Sanders on the practice squad. As critics like Skip Bayless argued, such a move would expose him to poaching by other teams, since any franchise that signs a practice squad player must place him on its 53-man roster. Bayless suggested that this could become Sanders' escape route, an opportunity for a quarterback-needy team to seize a talent they still believe was undervalued in the draft. Free him from Cleveland, Bayless implored, framing the Browns as a hostile environment for his growth. In this narrative, the viral controversy might inadvertently serve Sanders by drawing attention from organizations willing to give him a fresh start.
Just something to take people's minds off the disaster that has been the Cleveland Browns. I do like their draft class because I love Shedeur.
The potential destinations for Sanders remain speculative, but the logic is straightforward. Teams with unstable quarterback situations, particularly franchises already facing rebuilding phases, could view Sanders as a low-risk, high-upside acquisition. For them, the viral tape of Sanders confronting Stefanski is not a deterrent, but a signal of competitiveness and fire. His flashes of brilliance in the preseason opener against Carolina still linger as evidence of upside, proof that given proper protection and support, he can thrive. If another team interprets Cleveland's treatment as sabotage or mismanagement, they might be motivated to prove otherwise by offering Sanders meaningful reps. The alternative scenario, however, is less optimistic. If Sanders remains buried on the Browns' depth chart, relegated to scout team duties or inactive lists, the risk of stagnation grows. Quarterback development relies heavily on live reps and exposure to game speed decisions. Without them, even highly touted prospects can fade into irrelevance. Sanders' supporters, including former players like Ryan Clark, emphasize the importance of learning through adversity. Denying him those opportunities, they argue, risks stunting growth permanently. Should that happen, the viral footage of his confrontation with Stefanski may not only define his rookie year, but also become the enduring symbol of a career derailed before it began. For Kevin Stefanski, the consequences are equally complex. Already under pressure in Cleveland after years of fluctuating results, Stefanski must now manage both his team's performance and the perception that he mishandled a high-profile rookie. The Browns' decision to sign Deshaun Watson to a record-setting guaranteed contract remains an albatross, drawing criticism from fans and media alike. Every subsequent subsequent quarterback-related decision is therefore scrutinized through a lens of skepticism. The Sanders controversy, framed by some as evidence of stubbornness or insecurity, has only intensified that scrutiny. Stefanski's defenders emphasize his accolade: two-time Coach of the Year, a steadying presence in a franchise long defined by chaos, and a strategist capable of maximizing veteran quarterback. They argue that no amount of viral outrage can overshadow a record of stabilizing a historically unstable franchise. But detractors point to his track record with young quarterbacks, particularly Baker Mayfield, as evidence of a coach who struggles to nurture developing talent. In their view, the Sanders incident is not an aberration but a continuation of a pattern. Young passers placed in impossible situations, then marginalized when they falter. The stakes for Stefanski are heightened by timing. The Browns' ownership, led by Jimmy Haslam, has historically demonstrated impatience with coaches. Even moderate success has not guaranteed stability in Cleveland, where turnover has been constant. If the team falters during the regular season, the Sanders controversy could resurface as part of a broader critique of Stefanski's leadership. Critics would argue that he not only failed to win, but also squandered an opportunity to cultivate a quarterback of the future. In the unforgiving calculus of NFL decision-making, such narratives can tip the scales when ownership evaluates a coach's future.
I'm still convinced Haslam was the only reason they took Shedeur. He just wanted a little publicity splash.
Beyond individual futures, the Sanders-Stefanski saga has broader implications for the league. It has reignited debates about the treatment of young quarterbacks, particularly those drafted later than expected. Coaches evaluate players based on practice performance, scheme fit, and draft capital. The long-term question is whether Sanders can redefine the narrative. If he eventually earns meaningful playing time and performs well, the viral controversy will be reframed as an early trial, a moment of adversity that he overcame. If he languishes on the bench or fades out of the league, the footage will become a cautionary tale of wasted potential and mishandled development. In either case, the significance of that brief exchange on the Browns sideline will endure, not as a preseason footnote, but as a symbol of the crossroads at which both Sanders and Stefanski stand. The broader cultural resonance of the controversy cannot be ignored. In an era where athletes are brands as much as players, Sanders carries a legacy that magnifies every action. His association with Deion Sanders ensures that any perceived slight will draw attention beyond football circles. Critics who argue that teams fear Deion's looming influence only amplify the sense that Shedeur's career is not judged solely on his merits. For Stefanski, this means every decision involving Sanders carries weight far beyond typical roster management. He is not merely coaching a rookie quarterback, he's navigating the expectations of a legend's son in the glare of public scrutiny.
And the fact that why would they sabotage an NFL Legends player? I think that's part of it too. People do feel that Deion Sanders' connection to Shedeur plays a part in how his children have been treated.
Ultimately, the Sanders-Stefanski saga is less about one preseason game and more about the dynamics of modern sports culture. It illustrates how viral moments can reshape careers, how perception can overshadow performance, and how legacy can complicate evaluation. For Sanders, the path forward requires resilience, patience, and perhaps a change of scenery. For Stefanski, survival depends on winning games and convincing both ownership and the public that his decisions are rooted in football logic rather than personal bias. For the Browns, the controversy is yet another chapter in a franchise history defined by turbulence, raising questions about whether stability is truly attainable. Well, that's it for this video, but don't go anywhere because we've got plenty more heat for you. Just tap any of the cards on your screen right now and keep it locked.